Analog horror is a genre that has lent itself to a lot of very awesome stories due to its unique story structure. However, with the good, there must also come the bad. And with how oversaturated the genre has become as of late, with the bad, there comes the very bad. Bad pacing, tasteless plot points, and overall lack of creativity. Now, when you think of the worst analog horror, many people point to The Painter from UrbanSPOOK, which, yeah, that's pretty awful. But I want to look for some of the more standout flops. Ones that, although they might not be as bad as it, or maybe they are, but we'll get to those. But series that are still among the worst of them outside of our notorious little painter. Trigger warning. And so, that's what we're here for today. To find the worst that analog horror has to offer. From randomly thrown insensitive topics to AI art, from terrible pacing to overly cliche. Let's go over the 8 worst analog horror series that I could find. Number 8. Super Mario 64 1997 trilogy. Being one of the many Mario 64's personalized type of horror series, Super Mario 1997 is a 4-part series with only 3 parts, with it being almost a year since the last episode of the series. The biggest problem of the series is its pacing. The first part is basically just Mario 64 footage with a glitch effect until the very end. The player beats King Bomb, which I'm not even entirely sure why they included it given it goes nowhere, but once they unlock Koopa the Quick is when things get weird. Once they beat Koopa the Quick, it suddenly shifts to a red screen. Some text appears of Koopa the Quick lamenting how he never wins, and then we see him hang himself. Yeah, it's just as jarring and unnecessary in the series. Just feels like shock value for the sake of shock value rather than any actual scare. The second part is much the same, but this time the player is playing through Cool Cool Mountain. After getting a whole star and finding the baby penguin, the player slips off the edge with the baby where, when we die, we get a clean cartridge error message. The game restarts and returning to the level instantly brings us to the ice slide with a vintage effect over it and no sound for some reason. After completing the level, getting a star, and re-entering, we get a similar message to last time, only from the perspective of the mother penguin upset that her child is dead. And then it ends, with the build-up going nowhere. The last part is easily the worst among them, with the episode just being a playthrough of the game. They beat one of the underwater level stars, then they go beat Bowser in the Dark World. No creepy text, nothing. The only change being that Bowser does an ear-piercing scream unprompted a little after he dies. Now, clearly there was an effort to make something here, and it's way better than some of the other things we'll be talking about, but the main problem with the series is the way it does its build-up. Nothing happens for more than half of each episode, which itself is awful in a genre built on paying attention to every little detail. And when something finally does happen, it's just text on a background. And then, oh yeah, let's just throw in a little suicide, a dash of stock crying, and a pinch of ear-splitting decibel boost. Just a little treat. The other problem is, well, what's the story? In the description, they're all called tapes, so these moments are being recorded for something, but we don't know any of the context. It's clearly meant to be an every copy's personalized thing, likely based on M64 classified by Greenio, but it forgets the context. Were these tapes just randomly found? Were they recorded by a Nintendo employee and leaked? Were these recorded to prove what happened in game really happened to them? The creator seemingly moved on to a new analog horror series, with this series still due for a 4th part according to the description, but on the brighter side, it seems like the creator has improved since then. You go, man! Number 7. Nickelodeon hijacking incident. I know people have already talked about this one, but damn does it suck. The video starts out with an episode of SpongeBob, particularly the episode Something Smells. During the part of the episode where Patrick tries to convince SpongeBob that's actually just because he's so ugly everybody's dying, the episode begins glitching here. As the hijack hits, the screen switches to an edited version of SpongeBob burning in hell. After a while, we change to a round pond of some kind before we see one of those next up splash bumpers. On the side where it usually says what's next at what times, it starts delving into how they were Steven Hillenburg's wife and asking why they murdered her in rather poor grammar. Like, come on, man, if you're gonna be tasteless, at least be good at it. The spirit keeps asking why before the video then, unprompted, flashes so fast I have to slow it down to ensure nobody with epilepsy f***ing dies. Oh, and in case you were curious, the epilepsy warning is only in the description, where people don't generally look before watching a video. Anyways, after that, we see a screen with SpongeBob and text reading, "See you in hell, Stevenberg." This happened after Stevenberg died, by the way. Not only is it just terribly edgy to do this to a creator as well beloved and tragically passed as him, but to use real people at all, I feel is a generally shitty thing to do with analog horror, save for very specific circumstances. Because more often than not in analog horror, characters are either killed in very gruesome ways, or secretly super duper evil doing sacrifices and murder on my AliExpress. So yeah, I hate this like basically everyone else. Let's move on to a hotter take. Number 6. The bat incident. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I had this on the list before a bunch of YouTubers talked about it, so please don't hate me for this. But the bat incident is just so bad it's good, and I'm surprised so many people find it as scary as it is. Hear me out. So, the series tries to make Batman into a scary cryptid, which in itself is inherently funny to me, but it's the little things that really get to me. Like, his thing is that he arranges his victims' bodies into the shape of a bat. Like, what? Huh? The whole idea behind the series is that the whole superhero comic stories with supervillains out to get the world isn't real and is basically just a delusion, and Batman is actually a horrific serial killer. Which is a cool concept, but it's just done in this way that feels so silly to me. I mean, maybe it's just a skill issue, but every time I watch the series, I rarely feel any dread at all, and I've caught myself laughing on multiple occasions. Like, there's this thing about how to make sure your loved ones don't go missing, which introduces this weird plot point about Batman kidnapping kids for some reason. Then later on in the series, we learn that he was experimenting on them and turning them into Batman's allies from the comics, like Catgirl. So that brings into question the room full of small coffins an episode prior, meant to strongly imply they're dead. There are some good things about the series though, like as the series goes on, there's better and better visuals, particularly the owl hijack video, but other than that, it's pretty cheesy and doesn't make me feel a whole lot of horror. Not to mention all the little things the series just throws at you and then never brings up again. There's this thing about Venom that's briefly touched on. There's a thing about Batman being dead, maybe. It's just not done very well in my eyes. Number 5. Justice League Cartoon 1963. Here's another one that does way too much build-up only for not much to come out of it. Half of the video is just an episode of the cartoon with no changes aside from a black bar over Superman's eyes and a light VHS filter. Eventually though, we're interrupted by a message from the President of the United States. They tell us that superheroes, which are real in this universe, have turned against us, and that if you have any Superman merchandise or fanfiction, the police are authorized to shoot you on sight. Then we see a silhouette of Superman trying to rally the other superheroes and some text saying that when America falls, the earth follows. The fact it takes so long only for the payoff to be Superman is evil now just sucks. I'm not really sure what else to say here. I'm sure if it was explained more and was more than 3 minutes of straight uncut cartoon and then a vague emergency announcement from John F. Kennedy that will kill you if you ship Superman and Green Lantern, because everyone knows that enemies to lovers is the way to go. Number 4. TheWoods.mp4. I'm just as surprised as you are that there's a Bluey analog horror series. Like, it's way too recent for something like that, right? Why would people have Bluey on a VHS? Anyways, the series only has 2 parts right now, but like some of the others, it seems like the creator has given up on it. The first episode, Bluey Older Sibling, claims to be the initial video used to pitch Bluey to Disney executives, but also claims that everyone who watched it disappeared without a trace shortly after viewing, which doesn't really make sense given that the series was made. If all the executives that viewed it disappeared, then nobody would know what the series was about and would probably not greenlight it if the first episode made people go missing. The first episode starts off with Bluey and Bingo asking if they have any lost siblings, because when they were watching TV, Chunky Chimp learned that he had a lost sibling, and the TV randomly shows the binary for Demon. Randomly, the number you have dialed is no longer in service message begins playing with no text dialogue over and over again, with a face from Local 58 slowly fading in the corner of the screen. We then see several screenshots from the episode The Show, which was the Notorious Miscarriage episode, just blued out. We zoom in on Bandit and Chili before it cuts to black. It is then that we see a recolored blue Bingo with black eyes. Their name is Bruno, and they tell us about how when they were at the park one day, they heard a voice in the woods, which was a red man with horns. Oh geez, guys, I wonder who that could be. Anyways, the demon said they have a special surprise for them, which he, and I quote, instead locked me here and ate up my life. They continue saying that they lose themselves more and more each day and to find their body before it's too late. The other episode claims to be another pitch from the same writer, but don't worry, they aren't a real Bluey writer, and how weird the first person to ever watch it, and for God to bless our soul. The episode is called The Woods, and we see a bunch of screenshots from the show with hard to read text over it, which keeps forgetting words as basically every sentence cuts itself off for no reason. Anyways, Bandit is taking them to the woods to surprise them. They're both not so sure because the day would be so much better if their brother was still alive, which he reassures them that the surprise will be just as good. There's a cutaway where we have Chili talking about how she swears she can still feel Bruno and that he's out there rotting. Suddenly we get an MS Paint stick figure of a demon smiling, before we get to see the brother who is a rotting zombie, to which Bandit explains that everyone rots when they die, AI. Suddenly, Bingo perks up saying that he looks scared like he saw a big scary monster. To which it zooms in on the word monster and fades into an image of a man. We get a little info card about him who's actually the Bluey writer mentioned earlier, and guess what? He worships Satan. Oh. His face suddenly flashes with an edited wide smile and yellow eyes, and we see Blue Bruno again, who tells us how they can't take it anymore and how they want their mommy and daddy, but not the characters of Chili and Bandit, as they are a real soul trapped inside. And a la Amanda the Adventurer, they want out. They break the screen and blood pools out, where the series ends as of right now. This series is a lot better in some aspects, as unlike a lot of the previous entries, it's not just an unedited episode for half of it building up to nothing. But the biggest problem here is that falls super heavily on cliches. It's your stereotypical lost episode creepypasta with dialogue that just doesn't fit the characters, stacked on top of the stereotypical trapped soul of analog horror, and the devil worshippers done it of horror in general. In fact, take Bluey out of it, it's basically the same, as very little of the series actually ties into Bluey in a clever way. It could be Dora or freaking Curious George and it'd be the exact same. The only thing tailoring it to Bluey is the fact there's only supposed to be 2 sisters. But if you're gonna make a Bluey analog horror series, at least tie it to the show more. Take advantage of the source material. I'm not sure how to exactly fix it given, again, it's just trope on trope on trope, but intertwining it more so with Bluey itself to justify why this is all happening within this show would definitely make it a step above what it is now. Number 3. Gooby and Friends. I am genuinely surprised nobody talks about the inherent flaws of this series, especially the frequent usage of AI art. No, seriously, I double checked. There is not a single post mentioning how the show's most notorious images are both, when put through an AI image detector, 85% chance of being AI. That's far higher of a score than all of the entries of that Pokemon contest that was caught to be AI combined. Yeah, it's that bad, which is extra weird given the fact they can clearly make good 3D art. Not only that, but a wide majority of it is just flashy equals scary horror, and does several tactics to increase watch time, and thus ad revenue, by forcing you to go frame by frame for several episodes. And outside of that, a majority of the episodes are just, Gooby has a kid's concept. He lists off a few of them to you. And then the last one is something spooky. There just isn't much substance outside of the film theory video, but even then I feel like that's basically all we'll ever get. Assuming there even was a planned lore, but even then, most of it's just hidden under pages and pages of ciphers, codes, and vague language, which is a problem that plagues the genre as a whole. The series is basically impossible to watch if you're watching it through anything but a computer, and even then, only if you know the keybind to forward frame by frame and have the patience to watch was basically nothing but garbled sound and flashing light for 5 minutes. Maybe it's a hot take, but I am genuinely surprised that it has the audience that it does. Number 2. Tom Through the Window. Another surprisingly popular one, at least among reaction tubers, Tom Through the Window is an analog horror series where Tom and Jerry are real, I guess. The first episode has our main character driving down the road when they saw a bag get thrown into the river, but were unable to ask the person what it was or get it themselves. Now just to get out of the way, the main thing with this series is that all of the episodes of Tom and Jerry are actually what our main character is visibly seeing. Though this makes no sense given that the first episode we see is the episode Suffering Cats, which is that one episode where Tom goes to heaven. It's mostly just shown because there's a scene where a wet bag comes up to Heaven's front desk and out comes 3 kittens, with a Caesar cipher appearing in the corner that reads, "He murdered." So how is he seeing heaven right now? Unless it's the one scene in the whole series where this isn't the main character seeing it, but then how are we seeing this? What's the context? Hello? Anyways, apparently the person who threw the bag looked abnormal in some way, but the main characters overall brush it off as they've moved in with their neighbor, Mrs. Mammy, who owns a cat and a mouse, who are Tom and Jerry, and how our MC just loves to watch them, which again is the perspective of the episodes in the show. The episode ends with Morse code that just reads, "The static, he's coming." Though this is never brought up again nor important, same with the whole he murdered thing. Anyways, the next episode our MC is invited to dinner, however something is off. Apparently Tom hasn't been feeling well. They go to see if they can see Tom through the window, however midway into recording Tom and Jerry, their camera died, and they could hear someone in their house, who then breaks in and enters into their room. The final episode, we get a photo of the strange man. Side note, the camera died. How did he get a photo of the strange man? Once he's left, the MC goes to get batteries, and instead of leaving and maybe calling the cops, especially given the MC is still worried he may still be in the house, they instead go upstairs into their room to record Tom and Jerry again. Tom is trying to stab Jerry with a knife and almost kills him. Eventually he does with, I kid you not, an Undertale sound effect, and decapitates him. We see a Google image of Jerry with a black box censoring his face. And Tom apparently looks through the window at the MC and flees. Before we continue though, let's play a little game. In this situation, what would you do? A. Call the cops on the man still in your house. B. Go to your neighbors. C. Just stay in your room. Or D. Call the cops on a fucking cat. Not only that, but they tell the cops about the break-in, but then go, no, that's not what I'm calling about. I'm calling about my neighbor's cat. What? Huh? I think I'm having an aneurysm, or a stroke, or both. Anyways, by the time the cops get in there, it turns out Tom then murders their owner, Miss Mammy, for literally no reason. The MC apparently tried to show the video of Tom killing Jerry to the police, but they didn't believe them and thought they faked the video. It's a cat killing a mouse. Why is that hard to believe? Then the MC starts asking if Miss Mammy is okay, only for the police to refuse to answer, until we get this wonderfully written exchange. I wanted to know, so I kept asking, is she okay? A cop finally replied, no, she is
deceased.
I dropped to the ground and shed a tear, even though I barely knew her. The fact that cat did this is bizarre. I thought to myself, this isn't real, but it was. And that was the truth. Afterwards, we're questioned by investigators and Tom is put into a shelter. Arriving home at around midnight and turning on the TV, they get an emergency broadcast where the government is informing everyone at midnight of a tall creature that's attracted to alarms. Well, thanks, government! From there, the series ends, explaining nothing. Like, what was with the whole drowning the bag of kittens thing? What was with Tom killing everybody? Why'd he do that? Why was the weird tall man coming after us? Why are they attracted to alarms for that matter? What was their connection to any of this? And lastly, for number 1 on this list, Tiffany School Find Out Game. The only good thing I can say about this video is that the main character model looks like it really is from one of those girls' flash games. The whole video has a blink and you'll miss it pace. You're supposed to help her and Mr. Jefferson prepare for the school festival, though the whole game you don't actually do that. That's just a super basic find the object game, though that's the least of its problems. Between each level, Tiffany goes on about how Mr. Jefferson is such a good person and their best friend. I'm sure you can see where this is going from a mile away. In the last level, of which there are only 3, one of the objects you must find is a glove, which we can only find what seems to be a hand. Our character comments on how weird of a glove it is, until suddenly Tiffany says, I can't handle you, get out. Before it goes to creepy music as she explains how she's been doing horrible things for him, and how old men have always looked at her like that, and how the teacher's been following her since childhood. Though plot twist, it's not just a pedophile plot, as we get this photo as the video tells us how she's forced to eat the dead bodies of girls the teachers R-worded and killed. And ignoring the obvious problem, none of this makes any sense. Firstly, she was just going on about how great he is, and for what? I mean, she gave us the reveal like seconds afterwards, so why even pretend? Secondly, that implies the glove we found was a hand, so why didn't we notice as soon as we picked it up? Did they hollow out the hand and then just put it there? Why? Human skin's a pretty distinct texture, and that's assuming they did hollow it out, which they almost certainly didn't, given it's not caving in on itself. And there's got to at least be an odd smell. Are we just that dense? The ending is super obviously just edgy shock humor, and with the way the image is edited, I'm assuming they're trying to do what Lazy Games did, while simultaneously missing the things that made Lazy Games a decent horror series. Namely, that things had a purpose and were given a real-world explanation as to why they were put there in the game. Unlike here, where it's just, here's the most abhorrent shit I could think of, okay, bye! Anyways, the video ends with Tiffany saying that she herself is his favorite, and that she'll be next. Which again, if you know they're gonna kill you too, why are you still going through with murdering and eating people? Though there's one thing I've neglected to tell you. When you first enter the closet, there's a frame where the text says, nope, just going anywhere near mine, Mr. Jefferson. Which, again, goes in the face of the little story you did have. If she didn't want us to go near Mr. Jefferson, why did she invite us to help in the first place? Why did she tell us all these good things about him? And why go through the trouble of telling us all the horrible things you're made to do and are about to do? In fact, this line of dialogue for a split second made me think that maybe this is satire. Though even if it is, that doesn't change what this is. You can't just make a badly written story with the most edgy thing imaginable as the ending, with genuinely triggering material, and then hide it behind 3 frames of satire, which we know it's not because the creator is playing it straight in the comments. I hope the creator improves in their writing, but until then, this, in my opinion, is the worst analog horror series of all time. So, what were your thoughts? Are there any other analog horror series you think deserve to be here on this list? Obviously, no hate to the original creators, as making anything at all is a great thing, but I can only hope that they take that next step in their writing and improve as authors, so that one day these series will be mere footnotes compared to whatever they have in store next. Either way, this was Spice from CutCafe, and I'll be seeing you. Bye-bye for now!